I don't think it's possible to overstate the government's enthusiasm for absolutism. Fortunately for all our sakes, I also think it's impossible to overstate how much knowledge is in our hands now, courtesy of the internet, knowledge that empowers we the people to take back from government what is ours, what has always been ours, which is our sovereignty, national and individual. Online publication Reclaim the Net carried a story this week headlined, UK MP questions whether Elon Musk and JD Vance's criticism of censorship laws may constitute foreign interference. We read, quote, "At first glance, you might think Emily Darlington, Labour MP for Milton Keynes Central, had simply woken up on the wrong side of a particularly Orwellian bed. During a recent parliamentary hearing on social media, misinformation and algorithms, Darlington floated an idea so alarmingly daft that even the Ministry of Truth would have blushed. Her proposal that public criticism of the UK's speech laws by Elon Musk and US Vice President JD Vance might amount to foreign interference. That's right, according to Darlington's logic, if an American so much as questions the Online Safety Act, they might as well be stuffing ballot boxes or hacking government servers. Should we consider the current JD Vance Elon Musk campaign against the UK, particularly against the government and the Prime Minister, and this push about free speech and the misrepresentation of our free speech laws as foreign interference?" she asked, in a sentence so brazenly bonkers it should come with its own government warning label. This wasn't a discussion about cyber attacks or deep fake election manipulation. No, Darlington was talking about speech, dissent, opinions, the sort of thing democracies used to be quite fond of. Close quote. At the conclusion of the piece, Reclaim the Net had some questions. Who's really interfering in the UK's democratic processes, they asked. Is it Musk and Vance tweeting criticisms of its free speech record, or is it the British MPs and bureaucrats using taxpayer money to build a surveillance and speech regime that treats criticism as criminal? Those are important questions. The obvious answer is yes, British MPs and bureaucrats are spending our money in an increasingly hysterical bid to silence criticism of their absolutism. More important, though, is to remember that, as I said at the top of this piece, all the knowledge we need to turn back the tide is already in our hands. The internet is a double-edged sword. It's both good and bad. And on the good side is the fact we each of us have in our pockets and in our homes the greatest library the world has ever known. Among other nuggets, it provides access to the inviolable power of what is properly called the law of the land. The latest rash of MPs, their bureaucrats, and the rest of the would-be absolutists are quite literally powerless in the face of the law of the land, also referred to as the common law. Generation after generation of their ilk has sought to hide that truth, to paper over it with their ceaseless torrents of lawless legislation, to brush the truth under the carpet with bluff and bluster. But the fact remains that the Constitution of this country makes plain and untouchable how we the people might indeed must protect ourselves from the unlawfulness of government. Listen to this from an essay written in 1852 by American lawyer and political philosopher Lysander Spooner. Quote, "Any government that can for a day enforce its own laws without appealing to the people for their consent is, in theory, an absolute government, irresponsible to the people, and can perpetuate its power at pleasure." Spooner makes plain in the same essay that our protection from such absolutist government is trial by jury. If you think, as so many do by now, that trial by jury is some sort of anachronism, something you've no time for, something you think best left behind on the road to progress, then that's no accident. That is how the state has made you think.
Us blokes hate talking about a little thinning up top, and many of us settle with that balding look, but that wasn't for me, and that's why I went to Elite Hair, the world's leading hair loss clinic, and now I've had over 4,000 new hairs added to this barnet, and very soon I'm going to be rocking some brand new flowing locks. And you can too! So how does it work? Step 1, I sent the team a set of photos of my head. Step 2, I then spoke to one of the Elite Hair staff who looked through my photo submissions and worked out a treatment plan for me. Step 3, Elite Hair then organised accommodation and the treatment. I was at their state-of-the-art treatment centre in Istanbul, and their incredibly kind staff took me through the process, and before I knew it, I was in surgery. Elite Hair and their leading medical experts have specialised in pain-free treatments using the sleep deep method, and they really mean that. I felt incredibly relaxed the whole time, and I haven't felt any pain since. Check out Elite Hair using the link in the description. When you do, Elite Hair will provide you with a free personalised hair analysis. Then you'll join over 100,000 happy patients. Hit that link and start your hair growth journey like I did today.
Successive governments, in pursuit of absolutism, have moved heaven and earth in their efforts to undermine this fundamental tenet of our constitution. By now, something over 90% of trials in this country proceed without a jury. And even as I speak, the latest iteration of so-called government is at work eroding what little remains. But I tell you now, regardless of how much thought you have ever given or not given to the notion of trial by jury, it is and has been for hundreds of years the ultimate protection of free sovereign people. It is the kryptonite that brings absolutists to their knees. The trial by jury, wrote Lysander Spooner, forbids the government to execute any of its laws by punishing violators in any case whatever, without first getting the consent of the country or the people through a jury. In this way, the people at all times hold their liberties in their own hands and never surrender them, even for a moment, into the hands of the government. What we are seeing right now, evidenced just as a for instance by the spoken intent of an MP like Darlington and the government she represents, is the intention to make it illegal even to speak the truth if it inconveniences the regime in power. The same parliamentary hearing Darlington addressed heard also from one Dr. Erliani Abdul Rahman, a senior fellow at Georgetown and one-time Twitter Trust and Safety Council member, who said, "You," by which he meant the government, "should have every right to legislate it the way you want because you're protecting your country, your own sovereignty." Right there is how those who would be absolutist, who would see the locking into place of the surveillance state, the digital cage, seek to misuse even the concept of sovereignty. Here is sovereignty, which has nothing to do with Parliament and everything to do with us, the people. Here is sovereignty prostituted in order that we should be silenced on pain of imprisonment. In a world without trial by jury, in which governments are free to write any law they want and then prosecute and punish in the name of that law, we're nothing more than slaves. The last candle flames of our freedom are being snuffed out by absolutists. All around us, the darkness of absolutism is rising. Unless we, the people of the country, understand that we have ultimate power over our government, and I'm not talking at all here about the sop, the snake oil, the confidence trick that is the right to vote in a general election every few years. Unless we apply that ultimate power, our over-government, in the form of trial by jury, as it was originally conceived, accept no imitations, we will find ourselves in a place of tyranny. Unless limitations are placed upon the government, and more specifically how it creates legislation, that government will eventually write itself into a position of absolute power, because power ultimately lies with those that can deliver punishment. Governments must be subordinate to the sovereignty of the people, and that is made manifest in the most meaningful way imaginable when the people, in the form of the jury, exercise their absolute right and obligation to judge not just any accused of crime, but the justice of the law itself. A jury must not be coerced, must not be subject to precedent, must never be bullied or otherwise herded by a judge, because a judge is no more than an administrator in place to assist the jury, and that jury must be free to judge the accused, influenced only by their consciences, and must also be free, most important of all, to decide if the very legislation itself is lawful. And if they find that legislation unlawful, then they must be free to seek to have it done away with. This sounds like, and is intended to be, awesome power. And it is this awesome power that we the people, the sovereign people, hold over the heads of MPs, bureaucrats and anyone else that would have the temerity to seek to lord it over us. Scots philosopher David Hume described trial by jury as an institution admirable in itself and the best calculated for the preservation of liberty and the administration of justice that was ever devised by the wit of man. If we stand mutely by while any government, here today and should be gone tomorrow MPs, seeks to lock us in a digital cage, seeks to silence dissent, seeks to silence even the asking of questions about what that government is doing, if we tolerate this, then we will only have ourselves to blame. This knowledge is everything you need. This knowledge is all the power you need. Understand this, know this, spread the word. This knowledge makes us invincible. It is in this way that we are never governed by government. On the contrary, with this knowledge understood and applied, we govern ourselves.